And if I can, I'm going to share my screen so you do not have to look at me very much. And welcome. Welcome. I know it's probably not early for everyone, but it is early for me. And I am not a morning person naturally. So I'm glad you could all be here with us at this time. Now, can everyone see my screen? Okay. I am Clare Gutwein. I am one of your two diocesan youth conveners. My co-convener, Joe, is also with us.
Good morning.
And we have been in this position since, you might recognize the date, March of 2020. And so it's been an interesting journey as we kind of figure out youth ministry. So I know Anne said there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of people who kind of wonder where we are. And I will tell you, we have spent a lot of time wondering where we are and kind of, looking at that and exploring what we are doing and where we can be. So I want to start off quickly just by having you think a little. I am a former teacher, and in teaching, I always started off my students with some kind of a warm-up. And so I just wanted to give you a minute or two to think about this warm-up question. And that is simply, why youth ministry? And mention that it's something that's been identified as being important. I think we all kind of agree on that. But I'd like you to think for just a couple minutes about why that is. And if you feel like it, please write an answer in the chat. We're going to share these a little bit later. So, write it in the chat, jot it down on a piece of paper if you have one, but I will give you just a minute or so to do that. Okay, so I'm going to start off just by going over kind of what our goals are for the session very quickly. And sorry, my screen is not moving on by itself. Please forgive me, I'm getting over a sinus infection, so I'm a little sniffly. Our goals really are, fairly broad at this point because we know people have questions, but we want to kind of do a little exploration of the importance of youth ministry and discipleship and how they come together and why they are paired. We want to spend some time generating some ideas for youth ministry in various contexts because we recognize that everyone is in their own context, that, situations are very different. And as a piece of that, we want to make sure that we are looking at the ways that we can be very intentional about how we do formation in youth work, how we really are growing disciples as we do our work. We also are looking to strengthen the community of youth ministers across the diocese, to make connections with who is out there and let people know who we are and how we can help. And we would like to share some of our upcoming events and opportunities because we think it's important for others to know. So now I'm going to do what I think you're not supposed to do, but I'm going to start with some bad news. And I don't think it's new bad news. I don't think it's things that people don't know about. But if you were wondering, youth ministry is really, really hard. Like on a regular, in a regular world, it is extremely difficult. You are dealing with all kinds of variables. You have this constant kind of revolving door of participants. So youth ministry is for a finite amount of time. Kids come in, they get involved, and then they leave. And you're working with new kids. There is a huge range of interests in what people want to do, what young people are interested in, what they're willing to do. And also a huge range in their interest in general. So not everybody is into church and youth group and those kinds of things, and they don't necessarily prioritize that. And then, of course, we're talking about different situations, unique situations in individual churches. So you have a wide range of ages. Sometimes you have differing numbers. I've talked to people in the diocese who have youth groups that are going strong, 14, 15, 20. And then I've talked to people who say, well, we just have one teenager and that's it. And so there's a huge range. You struggle with leadership often, finding adult leadership for these kinds of programs, with finances, because, you're limited by the budget in terms of what you can do. And a whole range of other things. So it is very hard. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. The other thing to keep in mind is that there is no magic solution. So if you are here for me to hand you the kind of, here are the steps you take to make youth work, it's not going to happen. It's extremely variable. It's going to depend on your situation. And the best part is it changes every single year, every few months. Kids grow out of things. They gain interests, they lose interests. And so there is no one way to say, this is how you do it, and this is what will work. And that means there are constantly new challenges. We're constantly facing, how do we overcome this? But I am not a natural positive thinker. However, I like to look at this as well as new opportunities. So every time one of these challenges arise, we are in a position where we can rethink what we're doing and reimagine what we're doing and possibly change it for the better. And so we need to be really flexible. And that's hard. That is very difficult. Now, of course, this is just regularly youth work is like this. But then once you throw in the idea of a pandemic, for example, then, things get even more difficult. And right now, that is where we are. But it's not lost. So I want to take a couple minutes and go back to that initial question I asked about, why youth ministry? And I think that, there are a lot of ways you can answer this, and I like to leave it open. So I'm just going to go into the chat and take a look at a couple of these answers and just to see. So we're getting in that mindset of why we are doing this work.
Yeah, we have some pretty good answers in the chat, Claire.
Yeah. So Joe, would you mind sharing those actually?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Let's see. So Jane Carroll Wilson says to begin Christian formation in each person at a young age. Nikki Winfield says they're the future of the church and of ministry. And that makes sense. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Are you okay? That was my dog. Sorry. I think she got stuck in something. Let's see. Mary Beth McGrover says bringing youth into the parish is important for the growth of congregations. That makes a lot of sense. We can't grow if we don't bring in new blood periodically. Deborah Cook says to provide a safe, accepting place to be. I guess for some place where they can ask questions and grow in faith and in community. Paul Lawless says youth ministry is the future of the church. It is a place to promote the importance of how faith forms as we grow spiritually and physically. Ken Andrasti, we strengthen young people's natural connection with God because we love them. A simple but crucial thing to remember. Amen to that. Absolutely. Jerry Welch, because without youth ministry, the church will soon die out. We don't want that. Knowing Jesus is the way to a life fulfilled. Life is hard. Faith is the way to peace and community. Tiff Campbell says to help them grow in their understanding of God, to provide hope, and so they can explore God, faith, and learn to love others and themselves unconditionally, and lean into God when things get complicated in their formative years. Yeah, we have to learn to lean into God, not only in our formative years, but all of our years. I need to do some of that myself. Let's see. Rocco Sherman says the world is a difficult place. They need to hear the message of the gospel. Carolyn Carson says these are all wonderful points. Henrietta Lavengood says, I think with all the competing activities, perhaps camp or day-long experiences of youth formation need to replace traditional Sunday school, youth groups, etc. Camp for a lot of the youth in the Diocese of Northern Indiana, I guess, in Northern IN, was a big deal. Clergy, kids, youth, and adults. And Lynn Kowalenko says, for the future of our church and community. And these are all wonderful, wonderful points. Thank you, each and every one of you who took a moment to drop your thoughts in the chat. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And I think, I mean, I don't need to kind of reinforce that. I think we have said a lot about why it's important. I don't think anyone would disagree. And there are a lot of really great thoughts in there. And so I'm just going to kind of highlight a few. Some of this has been said. Some of this has, it's been mentioned or kind of alluded to. But this is kind of how we are approaching youth work at this point. So, sorry, slideshow is slow again. So just a word about, when we're thinking about youth, one of the things that we have to remember is we talk a lot about how youth are the future of the church, and that's where, they're going to take over and this kind of thing. But I want us to keep in mind that they are not only the future, they are also the present. So they are here now. They are part of the body of Christ. They are disciples alongside us. And yes, oftentimes they are developing in their faith. But we need to remember that we are operating in the here and now. And so I think that I have talked to young people who get a little discouraged when they're always told, yes, you're next, or you're inheriting, or you're going to do this. And I think we need to be more mindful of the fact that they can do now, and they are doing now. They are disciples now. And I think, we need to remember that. They also, when we're talking about youth work, they don't need to be separated necessarily. We very often think that we have to, kind of put them in their own group, put them in their own room, give them this space. And while that is very important, that is something that they absolutely need, is time with people of their own age and building those connections. They also need to be welcomed into kind of the larger church, the larger community that we have built. And that's what church is. We're a shared community, and we want them to feel that they are welcomed as full members, not as partial members who get their own room and a special night to meet, but full members of whatever we are doing. They really do represent who we are right now and where we're moving to. And so they should be involved in all aspects of the church. So when you are thinking about youth work, I think we very often have this kind of traditional narrow view of what that looks like. They have a group where they meet once a week, they do activities, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, right? We can include them in the work that's already happening in the church. If we are doing mission work, if we have programs, if there are leadership positions, these are all things that we should be thinking about. Where do our youth fit in this? How can we include them? And not even necessarily by saying, kind of this token throwaway, oh, we have a youth member of the vestry, but actually having a young person who is elected to vestry. Those are the opportunities that we really need to be thinking about. And I'll tell you just a little bit about my own background and why I feel so strongly about this. I grew up in a church where, when I was in that kind of middle and high school age range, when you looked at our numbers, our congregation was literally 50% under the age of 21, 50%. And in the church, that's kind of a rare thing. And so what that's meant is that when things happened at our church, we had to help with them. We had to do them. It wasn't that we were there. It wasn't that we were being dragged by our parents. But in order for stuff to happen, the young people had to show up. And what that meant was that we were doing things. We were engaging in mission work and all kinds of things that people of our age did not often get to do in the way that we were doing it. And I didn't realize that until I left that church and I went to others and I explored and I realized, oh, there are differences in how this is done. And I say this because when I fast forward to now, an embarrassing number of years later, and I look back at, the confirmation classes, my confirmation class, my two younger brothers, their confirmation classes, and I look at the people who are in those classes, the vast majority of them are still involved in the church in some way. And maybe not the Episcopal Church, maybe not the same church, but they are still disciples. They are still taking on that identity. And I think that it is worth mentioning because it speaks to the power of really involving youth, really including them in where we are now and giving them that space.
Can I just mention one thing?
Sorry?
Can I just mention one thing?
Mm-hmm.
So Clare is a cradle, I guess a cradle Episcopalian. You were born into it. I was not. I came into the church a couple of years ago. I was brought in by Bishop Chip. When I joined the church, we immediately, my wife and I were involved, or my wife was involved, and by extension myself, with our youth group at our church. And it was wonderful to watch them participate in things, to watch them grow in their formation, in their faith, and to be able to tap into their passion, and their enthusiasm and their energy. And I think that those are all such important things for the church right now. We need to find that energy so that we can tap into it and direct it. And they, what they can do for the church is so important right now. I remember the kids in our youth group being involved in so many things, not just like, we took, we did the lock-ins and we took them to, the skating, and we did the activities and those kinds of things. But they have grown now to become leaders of our church. And that's why we do this, right? We want to grow our youth into the leaders of our future. And that's all I wanted to say for now.
Thank you. So, yeah, we say this because I really want to challenge you to think about how we are doing youth work in a different way. Think a little bit more outside of the box, because we want to think about where they are, but also where they could be and how we could include them, where we could grow and where we could shift what we're doing. So I also want to touch on an important aspect of youth work that we very often kind of gloss over and, assume that it will happen, especially once we get to the point where we've kind of gone through confirmation. We have confirmation classes, we, learn all of this stuff, the kids are confirmed, and then it's like, check that box, they're done. But what we don't talk about is continued formation, right? Where do we go when we're doing, youth activities? Where is the formation piece? Too often we fall into that box of, we're going to take them bowling, or we're going to go serve dinner somewhere, or do a coat drive or whatever. And we don't really attach that to the bigger picture, that why this is discipleship, why we are doing this work. And so we really need to keep in mind that youth work is discipleship work, right? Whatever verb you want to use, it's creating, it's building, it's forming, it's connecting, all of these things, nurturing. We need to be upfront and intentional and clear about that when it is happening. So when we are doing an activity, why are we doing this? Where does our faith fit into this? And so I encourage you that when you are doing, when you're thinking about activities and planning things for young people, they don't need to just be fun. And yes, the fun is what gets them there. And yes, service kind of makes them feel good. And so it might hold them there. But I really want to make sure that we are intentional about planning for that formation piece. about stating why we are doing this. Where does this fit in? How is this our baptismal covenant? How is this being disciples? So getting beyond kind of the service projects and the fun and going a little bit deeper, because our young people are definitely ready for that. And if we don't start that now, then they won't get it. They might disappear. And now I want to step back a little bit, because I've been kind of going on about youth, but I haven't really identified who that is that we're talking about. And that's kind of a tricky question. So, youth, obviously, we can talk about anyone from kind of very, very early, I've got a 4-year-old myself. I guess he'd be considered youth, all the way up to, I've seen 30-year-olds identified as kind of youth in certain contexts. And that kind of definition has shifted over time. But to make it a little bit clearer for what we do, what Joe and I do, our position, our mandate as co-conveners specifically states middle and high school age. So that is technically who we're kind of mandated to work with. That doesn't mean that we don't do anything. We work with campus ministry, we work with formation, we work with young adult ministry, and we try to kind of build, make that a connection, because as I said, we don't need to have these clear separations. But I mentioned the idea of middle and high school young people because there's some very specific things developmentally that happen with kids at that age. And I think it's important to mention, because when we think about youth ministry and youth work, we need to keep this kind of stuff in mind. So people at that age, that middle high school age range, are in the process of their own kind of identity formation. And at that point, they more or less figured out who they are and who they might want to be. They're working on that. But what's really interesting is at that point, they're also looking at where they belong. Who do they fit in with? What group are they a part of? Who their friends are? What kind of, what areas of society do they fit in? Like, where do they feel wanted and connected? And so that is something that I think, here we are. We have this group that we want them to be connected to. We want them to be connected to the church, and we want them to identify as a disciple. And so how do we kind of capture that where they are? Because that's what they're looking for. That's what they're eager for. And two of the main ways that this can happen is, by building relationships with people who are already a part of that group. So, yes, working, if you can have kids of a similar age and they're becoming friends, and I can tell you some of my best friends are people who I knew from youth group, and I'm still, close friends with them today. Those relationships are incredibly important, but also intergenerational relationships. So when you are part of a church community, you get to know people who are older and people who are younger, if we are given the opportunity. And so we need to really focus in on that relationship piece, because that's what's important. And when young people have relationships with that community, that is the community where they get the sense of belonging. And that is where they feel connected. And that's what they will come back to. And that is how they will form their identity. So if you make them feel that they are part of this community of disciples, they will begin to identify as a disciple. The other thing to do, and churches are pretty good at this usually, is providing them space, right? Giving them a place that is safe. Several people said it earlier, a place that is safe where they can come, where they can be themselves, where they can ask questions, explore, and giving them that physical space, but also the mental space, right? Giving them a time where this is what we are doing. And that's just, it's really interesting, or it's really important rather, to keep that in mind as we're planning, because those are kind of the places where we want them to be. I had someone ask me earlier, we're working on planning a few hikes around the diocese. And someone asked me if we plan this hike for young people, I have some other parishioners that might be interested. Would that be okay? And the answer, of course, is of course it would be okay. It would be perfect, because imagine if you get a group of youth to go out and do this activity, and then you've got these people, these adults, full, kind of adult members of the church who want to do the same thing. Here you are giving them space and providing an avenue for these relationships to blossom. And I think that's very important and something we need to keep in mind as we do this. Sorry, I'm just going to take a look at I see chats popping up. So yes, the relationships are very important. I laugh about it, but even now as an adult, some of my closest friends, my son's godfather was my adult youth group leader when I was a teen. So I think that, yes, the Episcopal youth are under 45. So technically I think I'm still considered a youth.
I take exception to that. I'm 60. I still consider myself a youth.
Young at heart.
Young at heart.
So, yeah, I think we take some time. Sorry, I don't have time to read through all of the chat comments, but I think it's...
Yeah. I just want to point one out, if I might. Canon Drosty mentions here, one of the blessings and challenges of youth formation is that it means we have to look at how we ourselves are formed. We can only give to them what we have. So we have to attend to our own formation, where it's both weak and strong. I think that's a very important point.
No, absolutely. And Canon Drosty knows this. When I had children, it changed so much about where, how I saw myself and how I really began to see the places where I needed to work on that. And I think that's true of working with youth. They will ask you questions that you will have to go home and really think about. So this is all very important that as a church, as congregations or parishes or groups or whatever kind of context you're working in, that we are giving young people the space and the time to do these things. Now, this is, again, we get into a little more matter of fact stuff. So if that's what the churches and the parishes are doing, then what is our job as youth conveners? So our job as youth conveners, and you will notice the title says convener. So our job is to bring people together, right? To kind of gather together and convene so that we can work together. It's not to do a bunch of stuff and hope people show up, but it's to work with others. And so, yes, we plan and participate in diocesan-wide events. We involve youth. So that involves, for example, we have a retreat coming up. We've held a few workshops, those kinds of things. We also participate in other diocesan events. So anti-racism training, we opened that up for young people and had them, they were able to sign up and join with us. So that's one thing we do. But I will be, honest with you, that's very difficult to do when you're in a position like ours, where we didn't inherit a group of young people who were eager to work. We inherited a pandemic where you couldn't reach anyone. And so we don't actually know who's out there. So we can kind of build it and hope they will come. But the reality is that the young people are sitting in your pews or not sitting in your pews. They're out there. We know they exist, but we don't exactly know where. And so for right now, because of where we are, we kind of see our focus as working with people at the parish level, at the congregational level, to build those youth programs. And I should say that there are a wide range of programs that are in existence. There are youth groups that made it through the pandemic intact, where they were meeting weekly. They were still, kind of using Zoom and using other ways to kind of keep in touch. And they say, oh yeah, we're still going strong. We're looking for activities. We're looking for things to do. And that's fantastic. I'm glad that that's happening. There are also a lot of other places that say, well, we only have one teenager who's still coming to church, or all of our kids graduated and now we're waiting for the next bunch to kind of grow into this age. And so we recognize that there are a wide range of needs that are out there in the diocese. And we kind of see our focus as being there to support those needs, to do what we can. So we are available. We do have grant opportunities. If you have a program that you want to do where you just need a little funding to kind of get it started, or you're already doing something that's fantastic and you want to make it better, or you want to keep it going, we do have funding available. We also, we've learned a lot during the pandemic about who's out there and what they're doing and, what's available. And so we do have resources that we can help you with. If there's something that you need, let us know. We might be able to kind of make a connection or find someone or something that could help you. We love to kind of talk through what you're thinking and help to plan. And we're, more than happy to do that. We also really want to build a support network of youth leaders across the diocese. And we recognize that it's not always, like I said, there's churches who, have one teenager. And so you can't exactly have a youth group with one teen. However, you can find a different way to do youth ministry. What can you do for that one teen to keep them involved? And that might be something that is in your own parish. But one of the things we would also like to kind of push is looking at more regional ideas and convocational as well. I avoid saying convocation because I know that sometimes the convocation lines are drawn in very strange places, in regards to reality. And so if there's a church that's nearby that has another handful of young people, you can get together and maybe try to plan some things. And we are definitely here to support that. I know my own church has although they haven't been particularly good about it the last few months, but they try to do a monthly trip somewhere, and they have opened it up to the convocation and said, if anybody wants to join us, we are going to this bowling alley, let's all meet up. And that at least is a start of building these relationships, of giving the space to do these things. And so we are here to support that kind of thing. So if you have things that you want to do, that you dream about, and you're trying to plan and you're struggling with, please come and talk to us about it. As I said, we have grants available. I believe that is in your resource packet. You have the link to the form for the grants. We don't have as much money as we did last year, just to put that out there. So do it quickly because it's a rolling application. But we can offer support. And we are very open to ideas for what we can do next. And we would love to have kind of your input, because we can plan all we want, but if there isn't the interest, it won't be very successful. However, if you tell us what the interest is, we can work with that. And so that's kind of our job. So what I'd like to do now, sorry, I'm just making sure I didn't forget anything important. What I'd like to do now is, with all of that, kind of encouraging you, I think, to really think outside of the traditional youth group meeting, once or twice a month kind of deal. We'd like to give you some time to really think about this and think about, how to plan in your context, because that's really what it comes down to is where you are. And we can't tell you what to do. We can't say do X, Y, and Z and it's going to be successful, because we don't know your exact situations. So what I would like to do is put you into small groups, and I'm told I can do this, or someone can do this, of about 4 or 5 people. And in those groups, I'd just like you to take some time to maybe 10, 15 minutes to think about what kind of a program you can do. And, you decide, you can come up with a plan as a group. You can each kind of come up with your individual ideas. But I want you to think about, first of all, what is your plan? What is this thing that you want to do? And it can be big. You want to plan a camping trip, a weekend, a mission trip, that's fine. But it could also be something very small and simple. It could be simply finding a way to involve the handful of young people that you have. And that's all, it's all youth ministry. So it doesn't have to be a big deal. It can be something that is there, that is, that is simple and easy to do. So I want you to think about, what is the plan, right? What are you going to do? And then how is this discipleship? What goals do you have that really make this an opportunity for them that is more than just service or fun? But how is this discipleship? How is this growing them as disciples? Where are the formation goals? And then I want you to think about who is affected. And as I said before, very often we think about like youth group is the youth, that's it. And maybe we'll like have them serve a meal to somebody. And so then there are some people who are getting to eat, and that's good too. But it can go beyond that. So if you create this really amazing youth program, like these hikes we're talking about, right? You have a hike, it's not just the young people who are participating, but you can invite others in your congregation. And here you are building this community. And so I really want you to think about who that affects and where those, where the end result might take you. And then finally, and this is the most important for us, but perhaps the least important for you, what help do you need? How can we help with, whatever it is that you want to do with this plan? So if I can, or if someone can, we're going to break you up into small groups as I said, about 4 or 5. It doesn't matter if you're from the same place, just to throw out some ideas and have kind of a brainstorming session to answer some of these questions. I will put these in the chat so that everybody should have them. I don't know. Is there someone who can do that?
Claire, I'll open the breakout rooms. For those of you not familiar, you're going to be pre-assigned to a room, and you'll get a little window on your screen that just tells you you've been invited to join room X, and there'll be a join button for you to go into that room. Claire, how long will the rooms be open?
I'm just checking the time. Let's do 10 minutes to be on the safe side.
Okay, we will open the room.
Questions are in the chat, so that should carry with you.
Okay. So just click the join button to go in.
I hope that was enough time for people to kind of get some ideas out, to share a few things. And I want to open it up. We have about 15 minutes left, and I will tell you the only thing I have left to do is take a look at kind of events that we have coming up. But is there anything that you talked about in the group that you think you would like to bring to the whole group? Was there anything? You can raise your hand. Yeah, I see. Sorry. All right, here we go. Yes, Denzel, is that? Denzel?
Yes. One of the things that came up in our group was we talked about some experiences, and the essence of it was just that we have to, moving forward with youth groups and youth activities and youth formation, we have to understand that we can't do it the old way. Because I was talking about how for a couple of years, I was trying to get one of the youth leaders to do something different in terms of the Christmas pageant that just wasn't the way it was 5-10 years ago. And finally, the light bulb came on when we had a Christmas pageant type play, and it didn't go off so well. So you just gotta listen to each other, and you have to try to brainstorm and just think about, well, we got to do it differently. It's kind of like that theme that's going around now that's so popular. We have to do church differently. Well, we have to do youth programs differently, and will only be if everybody kind of just open up and be accepting to new ways of doing things, and not you keep tradition, but just do it differently. And I think that will move us forward in terms of youth participation.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. Jane,
Thank you, Denzel.
Yeah, we had 2 things come up in our group. I was in a group with Vasu, and one was to plan a visit to a synagogue. We have one in Wildwood, and they always invite people. And at Hanukkah, they have an outside program where everybody can come. And to talk to the rabbi there and find out if we could come as a group, and to get an idea of the Jewish people, because that's how Jesus grew up. He grew up as a Jew, and to connect where we came from. And the second idea was to find the main interest of the group of children, young people, and such as, like, if they like, most of them like music or can play instruments, which Vasu has in her church, and invite musicians in to help them plan a program where they can perform their talent, like a musical solo or chanting, to learn to chant during the church service when everybody is there, and that would get them included in the congregation. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's Genevieve.
Hi, I'm sorry my camera's not on because it's not working. So that's the only reason. I'm not hiding. This didn't get to come up in our group, but I was one of the things that I know that if just because we ran out of time, it didn't come up. But I hope that others might have some ideas and suggestions, and maybe if Claire and Joe can sort of put things together that might be helpful to us. One of the things that I think is really important for where I am is we have young people who had connections. They were just basically summer connections because we were for a long time just a seasonal or summer church, pretty much. And so they had connections. And when COVID came and the pandemic hit, their parents started relocating to Long Beach Island, so that now they're spending more time here. And the kids call them kids. They're in their 20s. They're people either in their, in college or out of college or didn't go to college. And they're living at home, some of them, and some of them are living away. But they're all back home sometimes. And when they come back home, they do show up in church, but maybe it's twice a year. Maybe it's 3 times a year. It's not a lot. And to build a bridge that connects, just lets us support them and stay in touch with them through whether it's, through, I'm just looking for help in how to figure out how to keep those connections longer. They do keep coming back. They come back at Christmas. They come back, when one of them graduates, they come back. So there's this group that's sort of out there that loosely connects to us in their 20s. And if anybody has great ideas on how we can sort of really tap the potential that is there, support them, help their Christian formation, the fact that they keep showing up to church, their parents are not making them when they're in their 20s. If they're coming in their early 20s, they're coming because there's something in them. So anybody who has, Claire and Joe, I don't know, we didn't get to talk about that in our group, but it's just a thought I had. So.
No, absolutely. That's a conversation I would love to have. And our own church is in a similar situation. We have a summer camp that recruits camp counselors. And so we have this huge number of young people who identify our church as their church, but you never see them except in the summer. We have this strange problem of our attendance goes up in the summertime because that's when they come. And we're not a shore church, and so it's we struggle with the same thing. So absolutely, that's a conversation.
Yeah, because there's another group that's connected to that too, which would be the lifeguards.
Yeah, and I encourage you all to think about, because when we think about youth, we tend to think about only the people sitting that are coming to church, that are sitting in our pews. And the truth is that, especially if you go back to that idea of a parish, of a church really, including the area around you, there are often young people who are there who aren't necessarily attached to any place and looking for ways to reach out to them. I know there are churches that do programs where they kind of invite the community in. I know, Messy Church, I know, is kind of like that. And I know of other churches that, I'm trying to think, we just gave a grant to one where they had a big Christmas party and invited everybody, and they got about 30 kids from the community who don't really have a church connection, but now they do. And so, it is something to think about. Who are those people that are vaguely connected, and how do we strengthen that connection? Donna, I wanted to keep going down the line of hands.
I was thinking about things that I've done. I cringe when anybody, but particularly kids, do public speaking, because most of the time it's horrendous. And I said, being apparently an all the time, everywhere, everything I do, teacher. I wondered what I could do, and I started a choral reading program. And we gathered the kids who wanted to participate, and we worked out several choral reading sections, and then they did them in church and other places, and it was helpful because they learned some of the basic tenets of public speaking, and they got to see people in different categories.
No, very good. Thank you. So I think, we've shared a number of ideas. I think that's all the hands, and we just have a few minutes left. So I wanted to quickly go back and make sure you have all seen.
There, Paul's hands is up.
Oh, sorry, Paul. It's blending in with your bookshelf. My apologies. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. So the one thing that I mentioned was acolytes. That a strong acolyte program is another way to get youth involved, and also in youth formation. And I was thinking of my own formation of many, many years ago, where my grandfather decided to train me as an acolyte, and that allowed me to better understand what was going on in church. Because as a young child, you go to church and there's all these strange people singing these strange songs, and they jump up and down and they bow but have no idea what's going on and know why. But as an acolyte, you have to learn to follow the service and know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and why it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely. I think that's very important. Another one that I think is often overlooked for young people is altar guild, because there are those that do not want to be front and center. They don't want to be standing at the front of the church, but they are very happy to go behind the scenes. And the amount that you learn from doing those jobs is incredible. And we, as I said, we tend to pigeonhole the idea of like what young people could do, but think about what your church is doing and where you can invite young people to join you, where they might have, interest. So thank you.
I think if nothing else, the pandemic has given us a beautiful opportunity to kind of reimagine what, youth ministry means in each of our churches. So yes. we encourage you to brainstorm like we were doing in our group, and see what kinds of ideas you can come up with, what kind of energy you can foster so that we can support that energy.
Yeah. And you should know that at the diocesan level, Joe and I are doing, that's what we're trying to do. And so we've had people ask, well, when is this coming back? Or when are we going to do this again? We're not necessarily going back to the way things were. Youth council wasn't really working anymore. So we're looking at what that can look like in the future. How do we reimagine it? So now let me just, sorry, I am screen sharing. Can everyone see this? Because this is one of the most important slides in this whole thing. And I want to make sure that people are seeing what is out there. Yeah, Jerry, sorry, I see your hand.
So no, you're not going to go back to the way it was in the past, but I feel like we've got to do something, and we all just need to reach out to each other and communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of, as I said, one of our goals here is to kind of let you know who we are and what we're doing. And please reach out, please join us when you'll see at the bottom of this list, we meet every second and fourth Wednesday on Zoom. So anybody can join us at 7 p.m. Please feel free to join us. And if you join us once, I promise it is not a life sentence. You do not have to be there forever, but we want to know who's out there and we want to know what you're doing. And honestly, Joe and I can talk ourselves in circles, but without that network of knowing who's out there and who's doing what, we can't do much. And Jerry's absolutely right. We're not going back to what we had, but that doesn't mean we can't build something new. And, I grew up on youth council. I know the importance of those kinds of institutions. We just have to figure out how it works now. And we would love your help with that. Just want to run through these quickly because I know my time is just about up. this is a big one, and I really encourage you to reach out quickly if you have thoughts on this. The Episcopal Youth Event, which is one of the biggest events the church has, is this summer from July 4th to the 8th at the University of Maryland. We are trying to put together a delegation, but we have to do that by March. So we're struggling to find, where the young people who might be interested in this kind of thing are. If you are interested, please let us know. There is in your packet, I believe in your packet, and if not, I can throw it into the chat. There is a link to sign up just to tell us someone you know might be interested. No pressure, no commitment. Just let us know if you think you have young people who would be interested, because this is a big deal. And it only happens once every 3 years. So most young people only have one opportunity to go. It is open to those who are in high school this year, so grades 9 to 12. And I did not get to go, and I've always been sad about that. My younger brother did, and he said it was life-changing. And my brother is not the type to have his life changed by anything. So I think that this is, something that if you have young people that you think would be interested, let us know, because we really would love to take a strong delegation. And it's a way to start getting people involved. They get to go stay on a college campus and be near DC. Also, Van Duzer Scholarship application is now open if you have any high school seniors. It's due April 3rd. There is a youth retreat planned for April 22nd in Asbury Park. We are working on planning some faith walks or holy hikes, or we're still toying with the name because we can't use some of them legally. But there is one currently scheduled for May 2nd that is sponsored by St. John's Little Silver. We are looking for others who would like to host one that we kind of market towards youth, but also towards anybody else. And we have a few in the works. So if you are interested, please reach out, and more details on that will be coming. Big one, baccalaureate service is June 3rd at the Cathedral. It is, honoring our graduates. So if you have anyone graduating from anything, let them know. We will also honor our scholarship recipients for the Van Duzer Scholarship. And there is an ECW service award as well, and we honor the recipients of that usually. As I mentioned before, there is a grant opportunity. It's a rolling application, so get it together. And a little secret, the questions that I asked you to think about on the, in your small groups are basically the questions that are on the application. So if you've kind of started thinking that through, you've already got to start. And finally, as I've mentioned before, we meet bi-weekly, second and fourth Wednesday, 7 p.m. on Zoom. Join us if you can. If you can't, but you want to do something, let us know. We are looking for, even if it's just like, I want to do this event, or I want to help with this event, let me know. Not a life sentence. You don't need to do it all. And finally, to contact us, the best way is probably if you use the first email address on there, youth@dioceseofnj.org. That will reach both of us. We also have our own addresses, so feel free to copy those.